and welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with Daniel.
And Daniel. And what's with the creepy voice again?
I had to change it up a little bit. I mean, it almost feels like we just filmed an episode right before this. And
Kind of does feel like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know why, but I feel like we've already done an episode. And for those of you who are watching live, know what we're talking about. Anyway, Daniel, we're in for our top 8 debate this week. What do we have on the agenda?
Today's top 8 debate is the top 8 Mensa select games. And for those who don't know what Mensa is, it's pretty much forget what actually stands for, but it's one of those higher IQ educational kind of things for people to describe, because I don't know if a lot of European countries use Mensa.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I know it is a society of people that have been proven to have a higher IQ. And now what the purpose of Mensa is, I think, is to recognize the people with higher IQ as well as to talk with like-minded people. I don't know. I probably am not smart enough for Mensa, but I do enjoy the games that they mostly select.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that, and I'm just writing down because I'm closing the polls right now, so I'm writing down the winners.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about the Mensa select games. So Mensa, a number of years ago, started making a list of games that they recommend, and they also do, I think, suggestions for like toys or projects or different things along those lines, where they encourage you, if you are members of Mensa or if you could benefit from it, or just in general to like promote the idea of learning and gaining knowledge and critical thinking and all those. Um, they started suggesting games. Now, I went through, I believe, the entire list, and there were some that were questionable, to say the least. And it did tend to add expansions into the list, but uh, there are some that I wouldn't necessarily have imagined would be on the Mensa Select list. Um, and it seems like recently they've added a few more, like the more complicated games, like almost like heavier Euro games. But a lot of time, a lot of this list was originally just abstract strategy games, because really that's a legitimate thing for Mensa. Stuff like chess or Go. Those I don't remember if they were Mensa select, but I mean they might as well be, because that's the kind of idea that they want to promote. Now, most of the ones that we're going to talk about today are not abstracts. There is one, two technically, that are
one
abstract.
is kind of abstract.
Yeah, the number one highest ranking one is an abstract, but that doesn't mean that a lot of these others do have theme, but the idea is that they have a lot of strategy. So that's what we're going to go with today, and we're going to talk about those. And also, we had the viewers on Board Game Revolution forum on Facebook vote on your favorites. And so that's one of the funnest part about this, is people can add in their own Mensa Select games and other people can vote. And what we do is we go on boardgamegeek.com and we always pick a category or a family, a theme, mechanism, something like that, and we put it in rank from the top. I found it on gamegeek.com, and Daniel and I picked the top 8 games that him and I have both played. Why do we pick the ones that we've both played, Daniel?
Just where we can make arguments for them, because this wouldn't be a debate if I'll take your word for it. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played it, and that's going to be what we would say a lot. So this way we can actually have good, logical debates, especially when we're talking about something with Mensa. We want to seem smart. We're talking about their games.
Like, oh yeah, that sounds smart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, smart.
I smart. I learned it goodly. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of these that, like I said, I don't fully agree with them being on the list, but we'll talk about those. And as always, we've picked a couple of our honorable mentions that we'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah, but first, let's go ahead and talk about the people's honorable mentions.
Absolutely. Would you like to talk about the first one?
So the first one on the list here is added by our friend Peter, and that is Clank. And this was on the list. I guess it is a really thinky game if you think about it, and it works for this kind of strategy. I'm okay with Clank. I know I have a big issue with it, the run and gun format of the original Clank that they fixed in other versions. But yeah, it's one of our highest vote getters out there.
Absolutely. I mean, it ended up with 26 votes. And we would like to say that the number 4 that's on the list, which we'll talk about more, is the godfather of deck builders. So I can see why this game outranked Clang as far as board game geek stats. And I know whether
Yeah.
we agree with it or disagree, the idea of deck building is a very mentally stimulating thing. You're not dealing with just I buy this, I get the benefit. You're thinking, okay, what are the stats of me doing this? What are the statistics of me drawing this? How much do I need to dilute this deck, knowing what I'm going to be buying?
Yeah, how do I start getting rid of stuff, shedding the things that are minimal to me? This way I can start getting my good cards. Yeah, no, it's really thinky when it comes down to it. Deck building in general.
Yeah. Another one was added by a friend of ours, Nathan, got 10 votes, and that's Castles of the Mad King Ludwig.
I honestly can't say anything about this game because I've never played it. Now, right now, I think it's still on Kickstarter with the collector's edition. So
I think just a few hours left, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah.
I do own this game. I played it a few times. I do like it. What makes it neat is that there's a really neat economic part of it that is as interesting to go with. But this is technically the second in a series of games made by Ted Alspach and Bezier Games, and that we are going to be talking about the first one that's in the series during our list. So we'll get to that later on.
Just recently got a collector's edition Kickstarter.
That's right. Weird how that works, right?
All right, so the next one on our list here was also added by Nathan, and that is Quirkle. And so the thing about Quirkle is I don't like this game. It's not a bad game. It's a decent game. But oh my God, is it very colorblind. And we've talked about this a lot. We're both colorblind. We both have issues with it. But the purple and the blue, I can't tell the difference between them. The red and the green, I can't tell the difference with them. That's 4 colors I can't tell the difference of with 6 colors in the game, I believe. So I can't really play it. It's a fine game. You're just making collections of either all the same shape but different colors, or one of every shape in the same color. So yeah, it's kind of like you're connecting them together, like kind of you do Scrabble and stuff like that. So it's good in that aspect of it, but I can't play it. It's unbearable. I can't tell what's what in this game.
Yeah, it's really tough. And Quirkle is our winner, and that shames me because so my oldest brother, he's also colorblind as well, and he likes Quirkle quite a bit. But he has the same problem that you and I do, is colorblindness is not friendly for that. So he actually had a friend of his write down like letters like O for orange, R for red, in order so he could tell the difference between the tiles.
Our mutual friend Bryce did that for me to play Quirkle. He wrote down what the colors, the letter of the colors in the little circles or in the shape. So like in the center of the shape, it'll have like a G for green or R for red. Yeah, no.
It seems like
but you have to do that specifically for a game. Basically marking up your game just to make it playable for everybody.
Yeah, that's not pleasant. They could have just simply like printed texture patterns on it. I feel like that could have fixed it, but I digress. The next one was added by Adrian, and that's Letter Tycoon. Which Daniel, have you played Letter Tycoon? I don't believe so, right? I used to own it. I might still do. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's a really interesting game. It's a word game, but you're making words to get money, and you're trying to get the most money, not create the best words, but get the most money. And you get certain amounts of money for certain letters, but then you can buy shares in certain letters, and anytime somebody uses that, you also get paid because that letter is being used. So obviously, like E is the most expensive share to buy, but if you buy a share in E, you're getting money because every word uses an E, give or take a few.
Sorry if you heard that. That was my heater just turning on.
Oh, we didn't, so that's fine. But I think it's an absolute brilliant game, personally. I like it a lot, and I thought it was a really smart game when it came out.
It sounds interesting. It sounds a lot like Stockpile to me in a sense. I'll have to play it to try it. There's one Tycoon game that I do want to try, and that's Raccoon Tycoon. just because it's got a funny name.
Yeah, that's a great name. Very different game.
Yeah, no, I know. So the next game on my list is a mess up by you.
Yeah, technically. Although, when I realized it too, I was like, wait a minute, did we include this game or not? And that's just because there was one that ranked higher, and I included this one anyway. We'll still talk about it. There was only one vote for it anyway, so
Yeah, and that one is Time's Up for everybody knows, and we'll talk about it in a little bit.
okay, sounds good. The next one added by Travis was the Duke, which is a cool little tile based strategy game similar to chess, except the tiles flip over and they battle each other. It's a really
Yeah,
smart game. I liked it. I used to own it. Don't anymore.
I haven't played it. I've seen the Vikings copy of it, the Jarl.
Jarl.
But I just never got around to playing it, in all honesty. I heard it's good, but I'm not really big into abstracted kind of games. And even
Right.
if you put a Viking theme on it, it's still an abstract game, so you're not going to get anything out of it. It's like Onitama, you're warring samurai clads. Sure, you could also be like warring Ninja Turtles for all I care.
You could be ballerinas for all that game. It doesn't, yeah. Exit stage
So
left.
the next game on our list here, I've never even heard of. Actually, the next two honorable mentions I've never even heard of. The last one I have. But the next one by Brett was Cogs.
Cogs. Yeah, I don't think I'm familiar with this unless it's like I think I've seen a cog puzzle game. That might be the one, but I don't remember it. I do know the next one that was suggested by Carl, and that's Ket. That's the laser chess game. You remember the one with the laser and the mirrors and stuff on it?
Yeah.
Ket. So
Okay.
that hopefully answers it for you. I think I have a copy.
I've never actually played it, but I have heard of it. Yeah.
It's
So
difficult to, or it's surprisingly smart compared to what it is. Like at first you just want to play with the contraptions of like bouncing lasers around, but really if a laser hits a piece, like because at the end of your turn you either move a piece or rotate something, and you hit your laser, and if it hits like the non-mirror side of a piece, that piece is damaged, whether it's yours or not,
yeah.
and it's removed from the game. It's really neat. You're trying to remove like I think the Sphinx head or something. It's surprisingly depthful. Like, I mean, at first you think it's just a gimmick because of the laser involved. No, it's a legitimate game. It's really neat. So I like it a lot.
Oh, it sounds pretty cool. I would try it out.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not huge onto like abstract strategy games and stuff like that. So if I can
You're
get
gonna
my
hate
earpiece back in, huh?
you're gonna hate my honorable mentions.
Probably. So the last game here on the list, and I didn't even know this got nominated for Mensa Select. I like this game. You're not a huge fan of this one, are you?
Nah, not really.
And that's Gunky Mono. I like it. I like the little puzzle placement and trying to stack them up properly and getting like the beating someone else in the certain amount of color samurai. I like the game. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way to buy, but if someone's like, or our mutual friend who owns it, be like, hey, I want to play this. Yeah, I'd be down to play it. I enjoy it. I had a good time. I played it 3 times since he bought it. I've had a good time with it each time.
Cool.
I actually
I don't,
won once and smoked people, so I was happy about that.
and that's a thing when you win like an abstract game like that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was probably just more disappointed in it because I thought it was gonna be better. I hate it. It's just I don't know. There was something about it. I just didn't have much fun playing it. I get why
Understandable.
people like it though. Yeah. Um.
So,
All right, that's it for those. Let's talk about the
mhm.
comments. Travis, he explained why he picked why we went with the Duke. So he said, I went with the Duke. It's one of my favorite abstracts and games. I like how the tiles flip each time you move, leading to a lot of variation in gameplay. For Mensa, I also really like Marrakesh, Hive, and want to try Gizmos. Those are the Duke I used to own, like I said, but Marrakesh, I absolutely adore Marrakesh.
Yeah,
Hive,
so
same.
I'm already going to say it's not on my honorable mentions because I assume it's going to be on yours.
It's not. I
I'm
have 3
shocked.
other. Yeah, and so I crossed my mind. I really love Marrakesh. It's a phenomenal game, but it's it's not one that I feel is strategic and heady enough to warrant being on Mensa.
Oh,
I really don't.
I didn't worry
Because
about that at all.
yeah, no, yeah, that's fine. I mean, these three that I picked for my honorable mentions, there's a reason why I picked them because I do feel like if you're in Mensa, these will benefit you because of the level of thinking you have to do for them. Whereas Marrakesh, it's a wonderful game, and I highly encourage anybody try it. It's not something that like you know, uh, I used to play this with elementary students all the time, and not saying that they're not qualified to be in Mensa at some point,
Oh, wait,
but
what are you saying? They dumb? Is that what you're saying?
no, I'm saying that this game is so easily approachable and understandable that you can still win regardless of strategy.
But I think that's what Mensa's about. It's just more of the game's about critical thinking. And Marrakesh still requires you to critical think how you're going to move the guy, how you're going to land him somewhere. Do you
Yeah, but
do you risk giving
it's
the other person points by landing them on their carpet and that sort of stuff?
yeah, if you control the exact number of spaces the main character moved, then yes, it would be a much more strategic game. But because it's just kind of like it's a pretty good chance. Like you can see every one of your turns and go, okay, that's a bad idea to go that way. So let's just aim them that way. Done. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be more difficult than it is. So I
Already
get it.
debating now, huh? I think you're wrong.
And I'm the one who owns the game. That's the fun part.
Well,
Where's
it's
my
because I'm
American?
the one that actually won, and you're saying I didn't have to critically think to win that game. I see how it is.
Well, you don't critically think in any game, Daniel, so it's fine. Don't worry.
I don't deny that. I am the chaos factor.
That's what makes it so fun to play with. All right.
All right, and so the next one on here is by Daniel, represent,
Yeah. Yep.
and all he says is Gios.
Which I'm not familiar with. All right. Carl. Sorry, we just don't know that one, Daniel. Great name though. Um, Carl says Ket is my favorite for being Mensa Select. There are others on the list that I like more, but more for being games I can have a casual drink or eight with. Ket, I actually have to think about. He's absolutely right. It's a deeper strategy game than most people give it credit for.
I'm going to go ahead and skip the next one because it's just asking a question about it. Though I do want to talk about what Linda is saying here, and that she's asking, does the list seem a bit dated? And so, again, to clarify, the list that we put on here may seem dated because these are all older games, but these are also rated on BGG. So this is how we're taking them 1 through 8 that we both have played on BGG. So that's why you're not seeing some of the more newer games out there. But that also can be for a fact that Mensa, I don't think, has selected a game in a bit that I can remember.
No, they have. They've been selecting some newer ones, but the thing is, they've been doing this for a long time. It's one
Mhm.
of the first board game, like not really awards, but accolades that have been given out from a prominent force. Like there's a lot of different ones, like Dice Tower Awards, but
Yeah, but
Mensa
this one's outside of board gaming itself.
that's true. Yeah, like this isn't a board game company doing it. It's somebody outside of it, and it's like the New York Toy Fair when they award things to board games. They're not like they have their toy Hall of Fame. I think it's the New York Toy Fair. I might be wrong, but I know there is a Toy Hall of Fame where
Yeah,
they
something
pick
like that. Yeah.
five toys every year, and anytime a board game is nominated for that's news to us in the board game thing. But it's normally stuff that like checkers or Chinese checkers or
Yeah,
stuff like
like hobby gamers
really
don't really want to play anymore. So
right.
there, you
Exactly.
have to take this with a grain of salt to an extent. Yeah, there's crossover as we're going to talk about here with the Mensa Select, where there's hobby games in here, but then you also got to think about like Mensa or the New York Toy Fair as you were talking about, or the Toy Hall of Fame. They're going to be more for the actual toy factor, the mass market factor, the stuff that's going to sell on the market. So you look at something like, let's say here, Raiders of the North Sea, you'd be good if you sell 5, 10, 20,000 units, but you're going to go up against something like Risk that sold 60, 70 million units. So there is a difference.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think during this debate, I think we should definitely emphasize how important the what is it meaningful choices category is. that should be our primary focus on this, and that's because these are selected by the high IQ society. Which one is the best mentally stimulating? I don't think it'll bias us too much, but I do think that's something that
A
we
very
should definitely.
expensive high IQ society, might I add.
Yeah, there is a monthly fee or
Yeah,
annual
the
fee,
membership
something.
fee is ridiculous.
Are you looking into it right now?
No, I'm not looking into it, but I can. But I just heard that Mensa membership fees are up there.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't understand what the benefit of doing it is. That's the part that I'm confused about. Is I don't understand necessarily. Granted, I'm probably not smart enough to understand, but I don't know
I
what.
mean, it's not too bad. You can pay $350 for 5 years. There's also lifetime memberships based on your age at they're acceptable. It's $79 for a year. I've heard there were actually worse, so I could be wrong. But I've heard that like some people, especially the ones that they go after, go from a kid from inner city and want them to pay a $79 fee because they're smart. They can't afford something like that.
No, no, they definitely can't. So, oh well, we'll see. Now, let's talk about the debate itself. How do we do this debate, Daniel?
The way we break this down is we'll take our 1 through 8, as we always do, in our quarterfinals as such. We will determine it by random choice. I have them all written out. They'll go in my hat. We'll pull them out. And what we debate by is our 5 criteria. The first one being, of course, ease of play. How easy and familiar you are with the mechanism, the likelihood of it getting to the table, whether it be the mechanism itself or the theme, or does it lend itself to a lot of analysis paralysis where you're making everybody wait at the table before you take your turn, or someone else for that matter? Next one on our list here is replay value, length of time, scaling well. Does a 2-player game play as well as a 4-player game? And does the time expand really largely, I guess you can say? Next is minimum number of plays to get the full fill. If I play a game of chess, even though there's a lot of nuances, I get it. But if I'm playing something like Twilight Imperium, where I got to learn this new ability with this new ability and see how this works out, there's going to be a difference. And expandability. Does it already have expansions? We're allowing up to one possible future expansion that we believe is going to happen, or something that has been confirmed by the designer or publisher that they are coming. Our third criteria is meaningful choice, the impact on other players' strategy, the impact on your own strategy, and if those impacts are based off an arbitrary choice or something that you meaningfully made in the game. And this is what he was talking about earlier, where we have to pay attention to this one because Mensa is all about that high IQ gameplay where you have to critically think at a high level. Fourth criteria that we go through is game immersion. Does the theme match the mechanism? Does it feel like you're doing something in the world of the game? As well as player interaction. Does it cause table talk? Are you talking with one another, whether it's trash talking, or are you just basically going through the motions? I'm going to go here, grab this, done, and then so forth. As well as memorable moments in game immersion. What is that stand-up moment in a game where it made you remember 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 5 months, or even a year later that you're still talking about today? And finally, the most simplest one here, art and production. The art of the game. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? That kind of stuff. The pieces and components, are they of good quality? Are they good standard? And most importantly, the graphic design. Does it fit to the game? Is it blending well where you can understand where everything's going? And as always, if somehow each game is tied, that's why we have these polls on Board Game Revolution. We go to the tiebreaker. Fan vote breaks all ties.
Cool. So that being said, we also like to pick our honorable mentions before we get into the debate. And that's up to 3 games that we each pick that we think need to be highlighted that would normally have qualified, but either one of us or both of us have not played, or they're just really good games that just didn't quite make the top 8. So yeah. I'll go ahead and talk about those first. My third honorable mention is a game about building a pyramid with marbles. Doesn't make any sense at first, but it's a game from one of my favorite companies of all time, Gigamic, and it's called Pylos. Pylos is a phenomenal little game. We have the same number of marbles. If you're the last person to put the marble on.
Excuse me while I take a nap.
Yep. No, it's super bland, super dusty, love it. Is all it needs is just a nice board with some divots and some colored marbles, either light or dark. That's it. And basically, the idea is you put a marble down. If there's a square of a 2x2 marbles, you're able to put a marble on top of it, and thus building higher levels. However, if you put a 2x2 square of just your color, you can remove one or two marbles from the board that aren't supporting other marbles. And because you want to be the last person to place, you're trying to mitigate that as much as possible. The other option you could do is that if you have a marble that is by itself on a lower level and there's a higher level available, you can move yours up instead of placing one of your marbles from your reserve. So it's all about mitigating and timing where is the best place to put it. So your opponent is forced to place down a marble that would either give you an opportunity or take some of theirs away, and trying to keep your resource of marbles as long as you possibly can to just fill up the board at the end and win. It's a brilliant game. It's this is probably my third favorite Gigamic game. Uh, my top two being Corridor and Corridor, and neither of those are on my list. So I just thought Pylos needs a time to talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it my turn?
Huh? What? Good morning.
Again, I've mentioned it before. I'm not a huge abstract strategy game player. There's a few that I like. I mentioned one earlier, Onitama. I do like some of them, but yeah. I think the only one I've actually played is Corridor. Is that the one with the different shapes?
That's Cordo.
Corridor. That one I've played. So speaking of Q games, my first honorable mention here on this list is something I've talked about, and I believe most recently in our not the last Chits and Giggles, but the one beforehand, and that is what I've been playing, and that would be Quicks. A very quick and simple roll and write game where you're competing to get the best score with 6 dice. You have a red one, a blue one, a green one, and a yellow one, plus 2 white dice. Basically what you're trying to do is get as many in 4 columns. The columns go 2 to 12, 2 of them, and 12 to 2, the other 2. And you're trying to fill them in sequential order. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and get them as much as you can because you get points based on how many you've got in that row. You can skip numbers if, say you're having trouble getting a 3 and a 4 rolls. You can skip the 3. You just can't use it. And so you're trying to be the first one to get as many as you can, because if you fill out an entire roll, you get to lock a die. Once 2 dice are locked, it's the end game. I enjoy it. It's a very quick, it's very simple, and it's a very fun game.
Cool. Yeah, that one I do like. It's a really fun roll and write. I need to play some more pretty soon. I haven't played it in a long time.
In fact, I think I have my laminated copy with the dice behind me.
Oh, very cool.
On this bookshelf right here.
My next one is I'm actually trading out my top 2 and swapping them. My next one is another abstract strategy game. It is my personal.
Nap time.
Yep, I'm struggling to say it's my favorite one It's definitely my top 2 or 3 as far as the gift series goes, and that is Yinch. Yinch is an absolutely smart game. It uses these plastic rings that you put on this hexagonal grid and all the cross sections of the lines, and you're moving these. On your turn, you place a marker of your color inside of the little ring, and you move the ring in a straight line. You can't jump over other people's rings, but you can jump over pieces. Any pieces you jump over, no matter where they are in the line, they flip to the other side. Well, these pieces have white and black on opposite sides. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get 5 in a row of your color by jumping these rings around and basically converting all of these into the opposite color, which means that if you jump over one of yours, it turns to your opponent's color, even though. But once you get 5 in a row, you remove all of them and you remove one of your 5 rings, thus limiting your options for the future. So the better someone is at first, the less resources they're going to have for the future rounds. And it's something you have to mitigate, and it's so brilliant. I love the way that works. It's an instantly built-in catch-up mechanism, and it's super smart. I adore it. So that's Yinch.
All right, another one I haven't played. Again, I avoid it like the plague. I know I said I'm going to start trying to be better about it, but just abstract strategies bore me. I'm
It,
trying to be better about it, but they do.
I almost wonder if you're just not playing the right ones. Like I get why like
I
Cordo.
think I think the main one I like, of course, I mentioned Onitama. That's a good one. Um, one of the games on the list here is pretty much abstract,
Mhm.
and I do enjoy that one. And the other one I think that is like a pure abstract that I really enjoy is Goblet.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
I do enjoy that one, but again, it's basically Connect Four with bigger pieces that gobble other pieces.
Then maybe you would like Yinch because of the way that moves around.
Maybe I've heard good things about it. People talk about it all the time, but we'll see. We'll have to move on to it. When we can get together and play games, maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Yeah.
There's other games on the list that we do want to play, so
Yeah, quite a few on our shelf of shame, but we digress. What is your number one?
two.
Two, yes.
Yes, my number two is I mentioned it slightly earlier. I don't know if it was in this one or in the last podcast, but that would be Dragonwood. I find this game to be one of my favorite little quick, simple games that you can play along the lines of Quicks. This one's a little bit more heady than, say, Quicks, where it's simple dice and card playing mechanisms. High score wins, and based on defeating as many monsters as you can. There's two ways to end the game, whether the draw deck runs through twice or the two dragons in the bottom of the deck are defeated. I think this is the reason why I like this game. It's really easy to teach and it's really easy to play. And it's nice if you play big, grandiose games like Twilight Imperium and you just need something that's really quick, cool down. This is where you go to is Dragonwood. You attack by playing cards to roll the dice. It depends on how many cards you played to determine how many number of dice you get to roll. And the cards can be played in certain ways. You can play the same color, the same number, or sequential order like 1, 2, and 3 to determine how many dice you're rolling. And each monster has those three symbols. It's Scream, Strike, and Stomp are the three flavors that you could do at a monster. So depending on what you're doing, you're trying to match it. They have a certain number, certain threshold. Some are higher, some are lower. But I do dig this game. I think it's a phenomenal game, and I recommend it to people who want to play with their families. I recommend it to people who just need something to be a palate cleanser after those big, grandiose games. I recommend it to people who like dice chucking. This is a perfectly good dice chucking card game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very, very good pick. I've noticed that there are a lot of game right games that,
Yeah, I was just thinking that too.
Dragonwood being one of them, we're going to
Two
do
on
the
my list: Quicks and Dragonwood.
Quicks as well. Yeah, they're a good company. I think Gigamic and Game Right, the two G's of the gaming world, those are top notch. And my last one is at first it looks like an abstract strategy game, but it's not. It is a 100% logic game, and it's called Zendo. I don't know if you've heard it before.
I've
It
heard
came out
of it. I haven't played it. You've talked about it before, not on here, but to me in general.
right. It's from Looney Labs, and I think it's gone by other names before because it's been kind of a its own thing. But the idea of it is very simple. If I am the one who's running the game, I build a structure using these plastic pieces, and they're either a triangular pyramid or they are um, like a bar, I think, or like a cube, and
Mm-hmm.
they're different colors and different sizes. And I have one rule that I follow, which will normally be on the card. Sometimes you could do more for more advanced, or you can have very specific rules that you could just make up. So, for example, let's say the rule is there has to be at least two red pieces. Well, uh, my job or everybody else's job is to try and figure out what the rule is. So I would take a number of pieces that match the rule, and I build a structure out of it, and then I would build a second structure that does not meet that rule, and I can have the pieces in any position that I want. Then everybody else, they will be building structures using these pieces, trying to figure out if they meet the rule or not. And you're trying to basically get these points by trying to guess if people are matching the rule or not, or by saying yes or no, whether yours is, to try and get these question chips. The more question chips you get, the more chances you have when you're going to try and guess the rule. And so, for example, uh, if I think I know what the rule is, let's say I think that like one red piece has to be stacked on top of another, for example, I would build a structure and I would ask the judge, does this meet the rule? And they would say either yes, it does, or no, it doesn't, but this, and build another structure and say, but this one would meet the rule. And so you're using like this deduction logic trying to figure out what the rule is. And it can be anything from as simple as two or more of the same colored pieces, or this piece has to be pointing at another piece, or this piece will not be touching something else, or like a lot of other caveats. It's so hard to wrap your brain around without playing it. But once you get like a few rounds in and you're like, okay, I see where this is going, and now I kind of understand it and the premise of where they're going, it's so brilliant. It hurts your head in such a good way. It's so intriguing. I absolutely adore it. That is Zendo.
So no, once you started describing it, I remembered it. Both me and my wife did not enjoy it. We didn't like it. You showed it at the shop, I remember, and both her and me were just like, nope, not
Yeah,
for us.
it's very polarizing for sure. It's you. There is no. That's okay. No, you either really like it or you really
You
dislike
don't, yeah,
it. And I just realized all three of my honorable mentions have 5 letters in it. Take that as you will.
yeah. Mine don't have follow that theme at all. So my number one game was mentioned because it was your mistake. It is my number one audible mention because I really enjoy the game, and that's Time's Up. It's such a great party game. Um, I've had so many laughs playing this game. I play it with 4 people and still have a good time as I do with, say, 7 or 8 people. It's a phenomenal game. Basically, breaks down. You're playing basically a guessing game, a clue game. You got 3 rounds to give clues about a topic on a card, either the blue side or the yellow side. So let's just say Game of Thrones. Well, you can't say Game, Thrones, that kind of stuff, but you're trying to give clues to it. First round, you can give as many clues as you want without within the time frame, but without passing. You got to play the cards that are in front of you. You can't go to the next one. And whoever gets the most points there, you mark it down. Then you go into the second round. Well, you better make sure you're paying attention to what people are saying in the first round, because then you can start giving clues based off what they're saying, but you can only use one word of it. And so you keep doing that, but you are allowed to pass. So if you're like, I can't think of this clue, the person could say, or you give them the clue and they're like, yeah, just pass. You move it down. You go to your next clue. And go and keep going. Get as many points you want in there. Total it up. You got your first and second round scores. You move to your third round. But this is where it really shines, I think, personally. I'm not a big fan of like charades and stuff like that, or drawing games. I love the third round of Time's Up because it's a miming game. You have to make a mime or a character without making a noise or a sound. You have to get across what you're trying to say. My favorite one that I like to talk about is when we were playing this game and one of the topics was Hodor. So I literally had to run to a door and hold it for the Game of Thrones reference and for you to actually get it. And once that's done, once all the cards are paid out, you go to the highest collective score out of the 3 rounds. They win. Phenomenal game. I've had such a great time with this one.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a really good pick. I mean, it was gonna be the only party game on our list before I realized I messed up. But at the same time, I agree that I don't. It's a wonderful game. It's easily like would have been one of my favorites on this list. Yeah, I don't feel like it makes sense for it to be a Mensa select.
I can get that. I understand what you're saying, but some of those clues, it has to be a Mensa select because you have to be a genius to figure out a clue for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's something about it. I'm glad we don't have to debate about it now. So let's talk about our list and which ones we're going to be debating. We're going to start off with our number 1 seed, Azul.
Going up against our number 8 seed, Forbidden Desert.
Then we have our number 2 seed, Architects of the West Kingdom.
Going up against our number 7 seed, Gizmos.
And our number 3 seed, Raiders of the North Sea.
Going up against our 6th seed, Magic the Gathering.
And in the final round, we'll have our number 4 seed, Dominion.
Going up against our number 5 seed, Suburbia.
All right. So the way we like to do this is we will start. I will pull out the coin of amazement. Daniel, one of us will
Using a
start.
mug.
Huh? You're using a mug this
I'm going to
time.
use a mug instead of a hat.
Do you want to stick with the same side?
Tails never fails.
Tails never fails. All right. So we'll flip a coin and we'll pick one of the first two out of the cup, and that'll be decided who goes first. So our first debater will be Daniel.
Tails never fails.
And you, Daniel, not me, Daniel.
And I get the number 1, Azul.
Oh, fun. Okay.
All right, so there's a reason why it is our number 1 seed, why it's very popular. Mind you, it wasn't our number 1 overall game if you go through BGG. I think it was the top 3 games we couldn't play, or neither one of us have played both of them.
Yeah, something like that.
But I will say this, hands down, this beats Forbidden Desert. For me personally, as much as I love Forbidden Desert, the thinking about this is beautifully well produced. It has a very simple drafting mechanism, but how you're using these tiles, do I put them down on the 5 roll and see if I can, based on what's out there, see if I can complete the 5, this way I can push it there, and get, all the points for using 5, or do I put it in the 1, guarantee me a point, and see how we do there, because you can only use 1 color tile in a row. So you got your 1 row, your 2 row, your 3 row, your 4 row, and your 5 row. So it could be the only one in the column, and it can be the only one in the row. And so I think that's an interesting idea. This is the one I was talking about, that this is probably the most abstract one on the list. Mind you, the others are abstracted towards their themes. I'm looking at you, Dominion. But yeah, it's very simple. It does lead to intriguing decisions that you have to decide. Do I go for the middle and take that negative point? This way I can guarantee myself first in the next round. And get the ones I want out of there, because there could be like a big grouping of reds that I really want to get. I do have to say, I like what they did for the colorblind people for this one, where they're all different colors, but some of them have symbols on them. Some of them are just the color, which works fine because you can tell the difference. I think it's a brilliant game. Is it my favorite in the series? No, I think I like the third one more, but there's a reason why this is still popular today. It's the simplest one here, but my God, do you have to think how you place these properly?
Right. Yeah. So you bring up all very good points, and it's tricky because this is going up against Forbidden Desert, and Forbidden Desert is it's probably the most difficult of the 3, but a lot of people consider it their favorite. I personally like Forbidden Island myself the most. Do you like Forbidden Desert the most out of these?
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that, and it makes sense. Like I said, I probably like Forbidden Island probably the best, but I also really like Pandemic. This is a cooperative game from GameRight, where the idea is you have a GameRight.
Oh no, I just saying from GameRight. We just talked about 2. There's a third.
Yep, there's a third. No, GameRight comes out with phenomenal stuff, and Matt Leacock, who is kind of the godfather of cooperative games right now. That's really cool thing. It's absolutely brilliant what he came up with. The idea is that you are in a desert. These tiles are shifting around, kind of like a shifty puzzle, or a slidey puzzle, as they're called. And you're trying to find the coordinates to all of these pieces that are hidden underneath the desert. While as they shift around, sand is covering up the tiles. Well, those are ones that you have to dig through and still search through. And then there's always one tile that has like 6 sand tiles on it, and everybody's like, we just don't want to touch that one because it's gonna take up everybody's turns just to try and get it. All while the storm picks up and the sun beats down on you. It's a brilliant game. It's easily one of the best cooperative games. Not only on this list, I think the only cooperative on this list. Yep, the only cooperative on this list. Yeah, but easily one of the best cooperative games of all time. I stand true to that statement.
There. And Dice Chuck adds with you, Forbidden Desert is a fun co-op game. He's played it several times.
Thank you, Dice Chuck. Glad you got my back. Yeah, I personally, Forbidden Desert, it's tricky to say that would beat Azul, because I absolutely adore Azul. I personally think Azul should move on.
I have to agree with you, especially when you're thinking about how you want to do it, the theme matching, the mechanism when it comes to Mensa Select games. The problem with Forbidden Desert lends itself to most co-ops. It can lead to tabletop quarterbacking where people aren't critically thinking because somebody else is
Mhm.
directing how things go. Azul, you have to critically think how you're placing things, especially if you flip the board and it's blank. So you have to figure out how you're putting your colors in there because you can screw yourself.
Yeah, and Dice Chuck says he thinks Desert is an improvement over Island. Yeah, I get that. Island is kind of like the easy Pandemic Light, where
Yeah,
Desert really was its own new beast. So
but
I'm
I'm in agreement with you. I think Azul should move on.
all right. So we're in agreement. Let's move on to the next battle, which will be Architects of the West Kingdom versus Gizmos. And I will be leading this off. Please, I hope, I hope I get. Uh,
Architects, yeah.
I hope not. For those viewers at home or listening right now,
Your
I'm not
pick is Architects of the West Kingdom.
okay. So I get why it's on this list. I'm gonna try my best, and I get why a lot of people like it. It is a heavier Euro game, which in my mind, while it is devoid of strat, or it's not devoid of strategy, it absolutely is a very strategic game. Stop laughing because you're making this very difficult for me. I'm trying. No, I mean it. I get it has every right to be on the list. It's just it seems like an outlier because there's a lot of other heavier Euro games that are somehow on the list or not on the list that should be. I feel very strongly that games like Carcassonne and Ticket to Ride should be on this list, where Architects doesn't make sense. Or even if you want to go heavier games like Last Will, Kalis, anything along those lines, I feel should also be on this list. But for some reason, recently, Mensa Select has been choosing heavier Euro games, which is proof by Architects of West Kingdom and Raiders of the North Sea. Both of them are good. Um, it's just Architects has the one problem that I've had that I've always brought up, and that's the no, hold on. This is based on the point. It has the one problem that you have to send people to jail to get money in that. But it also has a really smart mechanism where the more people you add to a worker placement spot, the more benefits you're going to get from it. But then that's also more enticing to send them to jail because you got more money that way, right? And so there's a lot of give and take that make it really interesting as far as which moves you take when. It seems this is ironic. It seems too heavy for this list to make sense. And I know I'm saying Mensa select list, right? It has every right to be on this list. It's just it seems out of place. It seems like the one
What,
that's
what
like,
what I find funny, you always argue this about Architects of the West Kingdom, and you're the only one that argues against it. I just recently watched the Dice Tower Top 100, and it was on a couple of lists, and they say they adore that mechanism where you can, yeah, you get to, you know, build up and power, make your workers more powerful by getting more resources by the more you have, but you also make it enticing to other players to make their money by sending them to jail. And so you got to be smart of how you do that. You're the only one that is detracted by it. Everyone I've heard that talked about this game likes that mechanic.
and so when I want to build something up to like a larger point, like how I wanted to in Architects, I wanted to build up this like whole like juggernaut of like engine building and be able to do that big stuff. But it makes other players force that limit on you through the gameplay mechanisms. Now, if we're talking games that allow you that freedom of building better and better things, let's hear your side of the debate.
So going on to Gizmos here, and no, I don't disagree with you. Gizmos is a phenomenal game. It's beautiful. It's well produced, but I mean, it's come on. It could be better. Don't get me wrong. I think what the second edition added the plastic dispenser rather than the cardboard dispenser. And so it does lend to its great choices when it comes to build your engine. But however, I would not play this two players. And we've talked about this before because two players doesn't allow the marbles to cycle. And that's a big problem for me because if I'm needing red marbles and you're taking all the red marbles and they're not coming down after 3 or 4 players, there could be more marbles coming out of the thing, whether it's just, I have this beautiful engine that can work with reds and you're taking all the reds. I can't get my engine to fire.
Yeah,
And so that's my problem with Gizmos at 2 players. But other than that, it lends to a lot of great choices of how you build your engine, how you store this, how you file this, how you want to make sure this works. I do agree Gizmos is a phenomenal game. I personally, though, would put Architects of the West Kingdom on.
Yeah. So we're going to have to break this down because I think you and I have the same disagreements for each of our sides as we normally would. It's kind of ironic that we got the opposite this time. But before we do that, Dice Chuck said, I would like to see more co-op games where the players each have some information or cards that the other players cannot see and are not allowed to reveal until used. It would help guard some against one player dictating everybody's play since they only have incomplete information. And then also, face it, he's a closet mad scientist, which, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So, Dice Check, I would suggest there's a game that I haven't played yet, but my suggestion for you would be Mental Blocks, which is a cooperative game, and it's about building a structure cooperatively, and each of you have a different literal perspective of the structure. It's kind of interesting. It's worth looking into. So let's break this down. I don't know if there is some parts I feel are easier than others. Easier to play is Gizmos, and Meaningful Choice is Architects. I give it that. Art and production. Personally, I think the production in Gizmos beats it.
No. Gizmos, you have a dispenser and you got marbles and you got plain cards. The graphic design in Architects of the West Kingdom makes sense on the board. You come with your little minis. You have beautifully drawn cards. You have nice cardboard coins. No. The production does not beat it on that.
I think it does, personally.
Just because of the dispenser? You got marbles in a dispenser.
Not because of the dispenser. The iconography on Gizmos, everything is icons, and it all makes a lot of sense because of how
the iconography works pretty well on Architects of the West Kingdom,
but not as well as Gizmos.
No.
All right, so we'll call that one a wash then.
Well, I mean, I'd call it a wash before one beats the other because. For me, you're talking about the iconography and stuff like that, but the graphic design for Architects of the West Kingdom's board is phenomenal. Everything makes sense.
It's super busy and it is confusing.
That's not confusing.
It absolutely is confusing. And on top of that, the different colored meeples that you have on the board, like those are even more. The spaces. Oh, one circle is bigger than the other, so therefore it can accept more people, where this smaller circle can accept that's not a solution. That's a size. It doesn't work. Like, I'm willing to call it a wash, but I strongly disagree.
I disagree with you. You are wrong.
Right. So, as far as replay value, they're both not very replay valueless. Let's break those down.
When it comes down to replay value, the length and time and scaling well, I'll give to Gizmos.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum number of plays I'd probably give to Architects in a sense, because you have your normal side A, but then you have your variable sides B, so your game will be different. If you use the variable sides, everybody's side will be different.
Yeah.
And when it comes to expandability, I'm sorry, this has to go to Architects of the West Kingdom. They have one expansion. They're already in talks with a second expansion coming out for it and a big box to put everything into it. So,
all right, I'll give it that. I can't argue that. That's all true. And what's our last one?
Game Immersion.
I think the theme matches the mechanisms in Gizmos because it is
it's an engine building your engines. I'll give you that one.
Quite literally, player interaction. I mean, the way the marbles work, but just as silly as everything is going on there. Now, I will say in Meaningful Choice, how your strategy influences the other players. Yes, that's absolutely Architect. That is that main mechanism that I have the problem with. But as far as table talk goes, and like, oh, well, I'll do this action, which lets me do this, which lets me do this, and then that, and then that.
No, I'll give you that. So, if my math is right, we're tied.
We are tied. So that goes to the vote. Which one goes on?
You're gonna hate this.
No, I'll admit it if it's Architects.
It's Architects of the West Kingdom.
Architects moves on. And
By
that
4
means
votes. By 4.
yeah, I mean I think what Phil Walker Harding is doing is really smart. As
No,
far as
I don't disagree with you. I like Gizmos. I don't like it at 2.
and see, I actually do like it at 2. I played it with the wife before plenty of times, and it's always been
I just
fun.
don't like that it doesn't cycle. I can see with like 3 people, it's cycling a little better, so your engine can fire a little better. If I'm hoarding all these blue dice and they're not working for me because I can't, get my red engine going because I'm just trying to get the dispenser to cycle what I need.
Yeah.
Or I have to pivot and start buying stuff for blue because that's all that's coming up.
Yeah, I get you. I don't blame you. Our next round will be Raiders of the North Sea versus Magic the Gathering. Have those two ever gone against each other before?
Not that I can think of, and oh my god, this one's gonna be tough.
Yeah. All right. And it is your turn to debate. Oh no, I'm sorry, your tails. My turn to start.
Hey, I'm just happy you had to get Architects of the West Kingdom.
I'm just tired of debating for Architects of the West Kingdom. I want that Raiders of the North Sea top 8 games that are not by Shen Phillips.
All right, let's see here. Yours is going to be your favorite, I think, on this list. Magic the Gathering.
Okay, let's talk about this. I think Magic the Gathering should move on, personally. I do like Raiders. Full disclosure. Architects is the only one in the series that I played that I hate. Raiders I do like. But I mean, what can be said about Magic? There's a reason it wins in a lot of our brackets before. That's because legitimately it is the better game. The more to it,
I wouldn't say the better game mechanicalistically. Sure. I wouldn't say better game though.
Well, I mean, mechanistically, yeah, it is a better game than most. Now, this is one of the few times it goes against a heavier Euro game, which is kind of rare. Trading out meeples for that. Magic has a lot of good things going for it. For one, it has the whole culture, which we've talked about in nauseum so far. But more so,
both good and bad.
Thousands of cards. There's a billion ways it can be played. There's countless number of strategies you can play. It has almost an infinite number of plays to get the full experience, because you're never going to get the full experience. It's just not possible. You couldn't play it enough times. And so going against Raiders, I think it has an uphill battle, but I do think it bears a really good chance. Now
it does.
Yeah, going over just the categories, I mean, art and production, it's only cards really, but the art is probably better, in my opinion. At least some of the cards.
Some of the newer stuff, I think 2000, maybe 2005 on is when the art really got much better. Though those classic arts like the Black Lotus, man, that thing will make you some money.
Yeah, it will. Ease of play, I think it is easier to play. Meaningful choice.
Magic the Gathering? No, I guess compared to Architects of the West Kingdom, it would be easier, or not Raiders of the North Sea. It would be easier. But I remember some people playing it and be like, and they're used to card games. Like I've seen Yu-Gi-Oh! People come over and play Magic the Gathering, and they're like, wait, what? This does what now? And this does who what?
Right.
The people making the transition from like Pokemon to play Magic the Gathering. That's
Pokemon's a kid's game, and it's very much intended for kids to play. That's why it's.
But you're saying it's easier, but
I'm compared to easier than Raiders. There's very few games on this list that I would say Magic is easier to learn than. Raiders and Architects are probably the only two that I would say that. In full honesty, I think.
No, I'd say there's 3 on this list that I say Magic would be easier to learn per se, and that would be For Magic the Gathering, I'll give you that it's easier to play, but it's what we've talked about before. It's easy to learn, but hard to master. It's one of those games that you have to play many, many games of it, learn the synergy of your cards to really understand how this works with that.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Which impacting others' meaningful choices, that's tricky. I think because what makes Raiders interesting on this is the fact that it's worker placement, but that also decides what workers you can take from it.
And also what workers are left for other people to use.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of the few examples where I would say meaningful choice would go to Raiders in comparison.
I can't give you that because you got to be smart. If you're noticing how someone's building something up over there, do I want to put this white worker over here where they can pick it up later and use it for something like a raid or whatever they want to do up at the top? Do I want to leave these pieces out there for them? I think there's a lot more intricacies that you have to deal with in Raiders of the North Sea. Like I guess I'll go into what I'm going to say about Raiders of the North Sea. That worker placement aspect of it is probably my favorite part, is that you get to place one down, you get to take that location wherever you place it, that ability, depending on the color, the variable per color as well. And then you take also the location of the piece that you pull up. Strategizing how best to do that is probably one of my favorite things of Raiders of the North Sea, not to mention the cards that you're picking up, the crew. Do I want to pick up this guy because he'll help me on the raids, or do I want to pick up this guy because he gives me more food to pay for the raids and stuff like that? So I love the choices that this game's make. Again, the art is well produced as well, the production value of it. This one, I would say the graphic design makes a little bit more sense than Architects of the West Kingdom. And that's why I was like, I think there's a lot more meaningful choices in this one than Magic the Gathering, because your only major meaningful choice in Magic the Gathering is how you build your deck before you play the game to make your deck synergize to go up against someone else's deck, because you don't know what they put in their deck. You just got to make sure your deck plays well against any deck.
So you agree with me then?
But see,
because I said meaningful choice goes to Raiders.
No, you said Magic the Gathering.
No, I said that I would give it to Raiders.
Okay, I heard Magic the Gathering that you would give it to meaningful.
You're just ready for the rebuttal. No, I agree with you. That's 100%. Yeah, I think it's more meaningful choices than Raiders. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, no, I heard you said Magic the Gathering. Well, it might have been you said Raiders is something Magic, and then Magic the Gathering, yeah. And then I was like, that part cut off on my speaker.
Yeah, as far as replay value though, that would go to Magic. I feel. I haven't given art production. I've only given art, not production, to Magic. Art, I think, is better in Magic, but everything else I think goes to Raiders as well.
Yeah, replayability, I guess, yeah, would go to Magic because it's been around since 1990 and they're still releasing stuff for it, just on that. But it doesn't scale well compared to Magic the Gathering. How everybody knows it is a 2-player game, but you can actually play it with more than 2 players, correct?
Yeah.
Isn't it like Commander or something like that?
Yeah, Commander is based around 4 players, and it takes about as long as a game of Raiders of the North Sea. It takes a couple hours for 4 players.
Yeah, so I think expandability is pretty much the same there. Replay value, I give you the cards. It could be different depending on your deck, but honestly, most Magic the Gathering players play with the same deck. It's when it comes to you and me where we just grab a couple decks and shuffle them together and see how they play. We don't really get into the hardcoreness of it.
Yeah, but you remember, I used to be in the hardcoreness of it. Competitive in it, and I mean, I'm saying like obviously it's the expandability that goes to Magic. Really, is what breaks it, because it can scale the same way that Raiders can, and it's about the same amount of time, but countless expansions. Excuse me.
I think Raiders only has 2 or 3 expansions, like a little. Mm-hmm. I think there's like a card promo expansion, which we don't really count, but then it's got like 2 full big box expansions that they had to come out with a big box to fit everything, because Shem Phillips likes to package them in those little tiny boxes. It's like, I'm worried because they have Paladins of the West Kingdom Kickstarter about to start with an expansion for it. I can't even fit the base game in the box.
right? Much less everything else. So we've broken it down so far. Ease of play is Magic. Replay value is Magic. Art and production and meaningful choice or Raiders. Comes down to immersion. Uh, which one do you think is more immersive? Because neither of them really are.
Uh, I would say theme matching mechanism would go to Raiders because if you pull the right stuff, you do feel like you're raiding on the other side of the thing when you have the right workers for it and you're building a crew to do it. You got to pay for the food to do it. Eh,
Yeah,
Magic the Gathering, I don't really feel like I'm a spell slinger.
yeah, yeah. Which I get. Like in a way, if it wasn't as random as it was, it would feel more thematic for sure.
I think both can lend themselves to memorable moments. More so, maybe Magic the Gathering, just because it's been around so long. You got the tournaments, televised tournaments at that. So,
Right.
and player interaction, they both could be monotonous if you think about it. If you got, yeah, you'll have your trash talkers, you'll have your people that like the trash talk. But I think for me, memorable moments go slightly to Raiders of the North Sea because I can remember people saying, "Hey, why'd you go there?" Or, "Oh my God, we got to build up because he's going to go take that last outpost, which is going to end the game." And there's leads to more table talk. And Raiders, I've seen games where people are just like, "Okay, I draw this, I play this, I tap these, I do 20 damage to you, we're done."
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds a little too right.
So I don't know. For me personally, I think game immersion goes to Raiders of the North Sea. But what do you say?
I'd be okay calling it a wash and letting the voters count. I mean, I really do because I think they both have. Uh, I think there's more interaction with Magic and more. Or I can see stand up moments for both. So I say let's call it a wash.
All right, I agree with you. And if you notice me jump a little bit, I'm actually shocked by this because Raiders of the North Sea moves on.
Yep, I'm not surprised by that. I started writing it as you were saying that, and
I thought
I
Magic had a larger following, but I guess we're asking tabletoppers, not Magic the Gathering followers.
right. That's right. Yeah, that's where it boils down to. Is the group that we asked generally are not collectible card game players. Generally speaking.
Yeah, some of them are. It's like us comparing Dungeons and Dragons to any of these, and we're asking board gamers. Now, I think we'd get more of a reaction if we had D&D versus board games because a lot of
Right.
people come from tabletop RPGs over to board games. So,
Right.
my God, my hair's a mess.
All right. And the next one will be Dominion versus Suburbia. And Daniel, I will be leading the debate this time.
3 times in a row. Interesting. Tails fails.
Tails fails.
All right, so this is probably my least favorite bracket. I'm not gonna lie.
I know it's your least favorite. You're going to be kind of indifferent. You're basically going to let me pick.
Okay, can you just tell which one of these two I like more?
Suburbia.
You're wrong. Dominion.
Really? You actually
Yeah,
prefer
yeah, I'm okay with Suburbia, but let's see if I got to argue it. You get Suburbia. I don't know
Suburbia?
if you
Okay.
can actually see that.
Nope. But that's okay. I trust you. For now. Suburbia. It is the best city building game that's as close without it. So let me clarify that. It's not the best city building game by any means, but it's the best simple
Lip
game with giving you a lot
City.
of options and a lot of build thematics. Because a lot of city building games are either way too complicated, like actual city building is, or way too abstract, like something completely different. If you want like a Sims experience and you're not a board gamer, or a SimCity experience and you're not a board gamer, this is probably at that right level where it's easy enough to learn how to play it, and it gives you a lot of options to build from. I'm saying that as a personal suggestion. If you want something simpler, Machikoro. If you want something better, I don't know, any civilization building game that's in board games.
Well, heck, you just said it's one of the best ones. I would pick Quadropolis over this. Days of Wonders is much better.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer quadrangle.
I say between two cities is a bit more abstracted than suburbia. I do like the concept, but that's more about, building two equally good cities rather than just building the best city you possibly can.
Right.
Heck, Everdell could be the best city building game.
Well, what I like about suburbia is that ev every building actually responds to all of the other buildings in a way that make a lot of sense. Like if you put down a park, you're going to get negative points and negative reputation for it being next to industrial zones. That makes a lot of sense. If
And it
you
also makes sense about like the airport. You don't want to put it by residentials. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that.
right, and then like restaurants, you want to put it next to water, and there's every single building has all of its little nuance, and all you're doing on your turn is just buying a tile and placing it somewhere in your city and gaining points, and probably gaining money too. It's incredibly simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. It's more simple than it at first looks because it's an intimidating game to get to the table, and I will give it that because it doesn't seem at first it looks incredibly difficult to play and learn, but then when you start playing it, you're like, oh wow, like all you do is just place the tile and then get some points. Now remembering how to do all that, that's a little tricky, but
No, I
it
have to argue against getting it to the table and intimidating and easy to play. I remember the first time we were going to try this, and you looked at it and you were looking at it and you were teaching us, and I'm just sitting there glassy face, and you're like, well, let's just do something else because it's not that simple.
yeah,
It is
it's
probably one of the more difficult games on this list. I mean, you were talking about how Raiders of the North Sea and Architects of the West Kingdom are very heavy games. This one is a very heavy game for what it looks like.
it's weird. It's in that weird, like it's way too heavy and it's way more simple than it's supposed to be. And there's like it doesn't it's in like
Like
I
making
feel
sure you're placing these tiles down in the right spot. Yeah, that's easy to learn. But trying to remember, oh, you don't want to put this here, but you want to put it next to this, but this needs to be next to this. So trying to figure out that puzzle with everything that's going on. Give me
yeah.
Quadropolis any day of the week. I'd play that hands down before I even touch Suburbia. And I feel bad because a buddy of ours got the collector's edition. He wants to play it, and I'm like, fine, I'll play it with when we get together. We'll play it. It's just there's so many other. I'd rather play Flip Cities than. And I'm not saying I hate Flip Cities, but it's one of the more abstracted ones you were talking about.
Yeah.
I'd rather play it than Suburbia. It's good for what it is. I will not give you that. It is very interesting take on city building and planning. It's got a lot of meaningful choices, a lot. It's very well produced, especially if you got the collector's edition, because dear God. But here's the two big detractors I have for this. It's very heavy to AP. Very heavy to AP. We've played this with someone who has AP.
Yeah.
And
You're not wrong.
because of that, it leads to a lot of downtime. And even
Yeah.
in a 3-player game, the downtime can be a little much. Whereas Dominion, it's such a quick game, especially if you're playing with people who already know it, but it's actually something simple to teach. I'm not going to deny that fact. You taught me this game when I played against you and your wife. Now, mind you, I got destroyed, but again, I wasn't really trying to win. I was a chaos player. I was having fun being the thief.
Yeah. Yeah, you just love the thief card and the interactive cards.
Yeah. It's one of the first, if not the first deck builder. It's what most people consider modern board gaming, the granddaddy of deck building games.
Mhm.
It is a sleek design that still holds up today. It's ugly as sin. I am not going to lie. And the theme is very abstracted in Dominion. Very abstracted. And as for memorable moments, it's pretty much multiplayer solitaire. I think the 3-player game that you, me, and your wife had when you first taught it to me, the most interaction was when I was thieving all your cards because you kept buying all like the good cards.
Yeah. Yeah, you just love that part. You love thieving my or stealing my cards. That was your favorite.
Yeah, but and when it comes down to meaningful choices, there are a lot of meaningful choices. You could choose however you want and still be in the game. Though I lost, I only lost by like 4 points to second place. Mind you, your wife destroyed us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's that. but it's fun. It's a phenomenal game. There's other deck builders that really I find more fun to play. I'd rather play this than Clank originally, that whole gun and run system. But yeah, no, Dominion's okay. I give it a lot of grief, but I think it should move on because of how sleek it is and still all the meaningful choices. If we break down into it, ease of play, I think goes the Dominion. Meaningful choice, I would give that more of a wash than anything, because even just in the base game, depending on what you put out there, there's a lot of meaningful choices in that. Replay value, hands down, Dominion.
Yep.
How many expansions are there? Did they just recently come out with a new one?
I think either 12 or 13 big boxes.
Yeah, so I say ease of play, replay value, hands down goes to Dominion. Art and production, I'll give to Suburbia. Meaningful choice, I guess you can consider it a wash. And game immersion, this one's tough because they're pretty much both abstracted when it comes to game immersion.
Yeah.
Both, I guess if we're going to go down to game immersion, I'd give it to Suburbia just because theme matching mechanism. Because you do feel like you're city building, whereas Dominion.
So does that mean that we're giving it to Suburbia to move on?
Well, no. If we're giving it to Suburbia, it's a wash right now. It should go down to vote.
All right. Is that what we're agreeing then?
So ease of play, Dominion. Replay value, Dominion. You agree to those?
Yep. Agreed. Art and production.
Art and production and game immersion to Suburbia.
I mean, I would call a game immersion a wash. They're both
right, so wash there. What about meaningful choice?
Probably Suburbia. Yep.
All right, so yeah, it's going to go down to
fan vote. Once again.
And yeah, this is actually kind of tough. Do you know who's going on?
Suburbia, I believe.
No.
Really? Dominion.
Dominion.
Huh?
Yep.
Good job, Dominion. All right. Well, that means that Dominion will be facing Azul in the semifinals, and Architects of the West Kingdom versus Raiders of the North Sea in round 2.
Semifinals.
The semifinals.
All right. Before we move on to
you have no right to give me any guff for puns from now on. That took the cake. The semifinals.
That's the second time we've used that one.
I know. You can't give me guff anymore for puns. I'm sorry.
Oh, I could give you guff. Look at the title of most of your games.
True.
I mean, you're one game away from being a Britney Spears fan.
Oh, that's a little too real.
All right. So before we move on, let's go ahead and give the votes. In last place on the fan votes, Suburbia.
Really? Wow.
6, yeah. Moving into the next one on our list here at 7th was Forbidden Desert with 7 votes. And let's see, what else do we have here? Gizmos is there, and
Magic the Gathering.
Magic the Gathering was actually 6th on votes with 8.
Wow.
And finally, Gizmos was our 4th best vote getter with 14.
So it seems like we're kind of aligned with the viewers now.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting when it comes down to it. So let's move on to the semifinals.
All right, that sounds good. The first round, Dominion versus Azul. And you are leading us off, sir. Taking up the cup for dramatic effect.
All right, Azul. Wow, I got Azul twice.
You're a big fan.
I do. I dig Azul. I really do. Again, what can I say that I didn't say the last time I had argue this? There's a reason why it's number 1. It's very simple, but it's very thinky. Now it's going up against a juggernaut like Dominion. So when I go down to it, ease of play, I think Azul is the easier game to play. Art and production, I think Azul is better produced. Not like as massively produced as Dominion is. What we say, 13 expansions. Game immersion, I see Azul slightly leading that one in my vote. You could probably sway my mind on it, but I see it slightly leading there. Replay value. I'm sorry, Azul. Dominion's got you beat just on the expansions alone. And because they didn't really make expansions for it, they give you like an overlay and two other games in the series.
Yeah. Well, they also gave the Joker tiles, which are
Yeah.
relevant.
So ease of play, art and production. When it comes down to meaningful choice, it's another one where I feel it's kind of a wash. They're really good, meaningful choices in this game. But yeah, so for me, I would say Azul goes on, but let's hear what you got to say about Dominion.
Yeah, Dominion. I mean, it, I would almost say it's easier to play because the concept of you just take whatever money you have to buy whatever you can afford and throw it into your it's now there are other games like Hero Realms and Star Realms that made it simpler, and that's my only counter argument to it is that deck building itself inherently is not difficult. It sounds difficult at first, but one a couple turns in, everybody understands it.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet somebody who didn't understand deck building by the end of the first game. So, although, I mean, Azul is essentially just drafting. So once they understand how to place the tiles, then it's pretty fair from there.
Yeah.
Now, art and production, I'll give Azul. Azul's gorgeous. It absolutely is a better production, 100%. But replay value, yes, I do think that goes to Dominion. Uh, Game immersion, I mean, in a way, Azul is very thematic as
Compared to
Dominion.
Dominion, yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah, in Dominion, you're building a domain and you're buying buildings that produce things and getting people and that do abilities and stuff when they come up. It's not terribly unthematic, but Azul, the theme is you are building a mosaic tile. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're doing. You
No,
know,
I can't disagree with you on that. And the thing is, when it comes to like game immersion, the reason why I say this one for me personally goes to Azul, because when it goes down to memorable moments, I don't remember people, having a good time with strangers at a table that I've had with Azul. I played Azul at the shop. I played Azul at Dice Tower West. I played the giant Azul at Dice Tower West with people I don't know and had a blast. It's a phenomenal game when it comes to that. When you play Dominion with people who know the ins and out Dominion, you're not going to have fun or a memorable moment. You're just going to remember the butt kicking you just took.
yeah. Well, I mean, you said it alone though. You enjoy being the thief that was like I don't have to earn points. I'm gonna take your points. That's the big
No, I don't get me wrong. That's fun, but that's the one thing I take from Azul or
right.
from Dominion. I've played it a couple other times because you needed people to fill in seats on at the shop, and since I already knew how to play it, I went ahead and it's fine. But I've had more talking and interacting with Azul. To me, is that one game that you can sit there and play, and you can draft, you can talk with other people at the table, that you could trash talk by taking things that they want while drinking a beer and just having a good time. I could see Azul being, if it didn't take up so much space, a really good pub game.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I don't disagree that it should move on. I think Azul just is a better game. I personally prefer Dominion. Oh, maybe I don't know. See, that's tough. I Azul really did climb my ranks when it first came out, and I really
The
still
thing
it's one of
about for me that Azul, there's two reasons why it's cooled off for me, and I really do love the game, and I agree with you. Azul is moving on. One, my wife doesn't like it because she's found the pattern, and so she just thinks it's too simple. And two, because they've released the other games. I don't care much for the stained glass one, but the Summer Pavilion, I just think that one is the best Azul for my price. I think there's a lot of thinking going in there, trying to get the right amount to put in your little thing to get to, maybe I'll take this way I can get 6 here. Yeah, I just think that's what replaced Azul for me because it plays similar but slightly different than Azul. That's why I like it so much more.
I can agree with that. Cool. So the next round, Azul moves on, beating Dominion in the semifinals. Next one, Architects of the West Kingdom versus Raiders of the North Sea. Daniel, you get to start us off on this one. which one are you going to get? And I swear to God, if you get Raiders of the North Sea. You got it, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Well, let's just put that on. Raiders of the North Sea goes on.
No, I want to hear you. Are you Architects of the West Kingdom again? Oh, what can I say about Raiders of the North Sea that, again, we haven't already said in the last round? It is a phenomenal game. It's a good game. I really enjoy it. Oh, I would own it if I didn't have that role. Now, there are a few games that I own that other people don't have, but I'd have the Architects system. Our buddy Bryce has the Raiders of the North Sea system. So if I want to play it, I can still play it over there. I don't choose one or the other. I think for me personally, I like Architects of the West Kingdom just slightly more. And that's because I have all my workers. Yeah, someone will send them to jail and I have to pay to get them out and stuff like that. But I have all my workers from the beginning of the game. That's the first time I've ever seen that. But Raiders of the North Sea, when it comes down to it, I think I like the worker placement in it slightly more. Just I place one down, I get the action where I place it, and then I have to pick one up and I get the action where I place that. So I just like that. I really dig that mechanism. You don't really see it a lot.
Right.
I can't even think of
an version in a way.
Yeah, but you got to be smart at what color you're putting down, because if I put a black here, hey, I get to do these things rather than if I put a white here and I can only do this one little section of it. And I like that. I like how you have to be smart of how you do your worker placement, how you have to be smart about what characters you buy, what bonus points that you buy, how you go about raiding. Make sure you have enough food to do the raid itself, to pay the fees and stuff like that. Whether if you're going to go up for the top 4, that sends the in-game triggers going on, or do you just stay down here with the little monasteries? Right. I like a lot of that. Both of these games are very iconography heavy. When I go into it, I think ease of play goes to Architects of the West Kingdom just because you have all your workers. You place it out there and you get to build up. Now, yeah, the prison thing can make it a little difficult for some people, but I think it's just a much simpler worker mechanism or worker placement mechanism compared to Architects, because it's straightforward. You just place out a worker, you get the resource wherever you place them. Replay value, I give it to Raiders of the North Sea. It has more expansions as of right now.
Right.
Meaningful choice. I'll have to come back to that. Game immersion, I'll have to come back to that. Art production, I have to give a wash. They're pretty much the same production.
Yeah. It's the same thing. No, I agree. Personally, I think Raiders should move on because realistically, all of them are essentially every talking point we have is essentially the exact same thing over the whole thing, with the exception of I think that the worker placement system in Raiders of the North Sea is just as simple as it's actually more simple than Architects. And the reason being is because in Raiders of the North Sea, you put out a worker, you get the stuff. So, and that is other workers sometimes, more often than not, but you put out a worker, you get the stuff. Whereas Architects, you put out a worker and you get perpetually more based on how long you can keep putting them out. That's more steps than it is for Raiders of the North Sea. Raiders of the North Sea is almost more of a traditional worker placement. Now, because of that forced conflict between Architects, that's why I think Raiders of the North Sea should move on, because it's more elegant. Personally, I think it's a simpler game to understand. It flows better, and it doesn't force the interaction between each other by limiting the economics of the game. That's just why I think that should move on as a whole. I agree with you that art and production has to be a wash. Ease of play, based on the theme, I think more people would rather be Vikings than Architects. I mean, that's just more of a fun.
You'd be surprised.
I would be surprised. You're right. So that's why I think Vikings still. I would be surprised. You're right.
Well, I'm not just talking about what I see over here, but I'm also talking about I watch a lot of top 100s from Dice Tower. I've watched other people's top 10 games and stuff like that. Architects is rated higher than Raiders of the North Sea. Even in our top 8 debate, what you're saying is wrong because everything has proven you
Well,
wrong that Architects is rated higher.
ease of play though would go to Raiders of the North Sea, I feel, and the reason being is because hear me out. It's less AP prone for Raiders of the North Sea, and that's because if someone takes my spot, well then okay, my plan has to change. I pick a new spot. That's it. Whereas if someone's an architect, not only do I have to not plan the right spot, I have to plan now when would be the viable time for me to get my workers back, and do I miss putting out workers to do that? That causes way more analysis paralysis because in Raiders of the North Sea, you change one turn. It's more AP prone in Architects because when somebody takes your workers away, you have to plan multiple changes of turns now. Like, do you still go for the spot you're going to go for? Do you stay limited? Do you now get your workers back? That's where I'm going with that. Meaningful choice. I don't think there's any more meaningful choice in one than the other. I really don't. I think they're both very meaningful choices. So I'd be fine calling that a wash. Replay value goes to Raiders because there's more expansions. That's the only reason it's better. So with that being said, even if we give it to Architects and Immersion, I would still give 2 of these points to Raiders and 2 of them be a wash.
See, I can't. I have to disagree with you on the ease of play, though. I'll give you that Vikings are probably more than likely to get to the table. But I think the fact that it's just simply you're placing a worker out there. That's all you got to worry about in the beginning of the game. Then they compound. Yeah, it's much simpler. Okay, if I put this one out there, I can do this. If I put this one out there, I can do this. I've played Architects and Raiders of the North Sea probably more than any one of us. I've seen more AP in Raiders of the North Sea because of the trying to math it, trying to min-max it. That's the word I'm looking for, where they're trying to, okay, if I do this, this, and this, then I can get this, this, and this. If I do this properly, oh, he took that spot. Okay, now this, this, and this. And I've seen things screech to a halt, where it's basically, oh, you took all my guys over there. Okay, I'll wait till you get your money for prison. I can still put my guys over here.
But it still screeches to a halt in Architects, and proof being the game that I played with you. There was multiple times where one of us would, like, where if I took our friend Dom's workers, it's like, all right, well, I'll take you guys to jail. Then he had to completely reroute his next few turns because he had to accommodate for that alone. And that's really where the AP was caused. They both cause headiness, but when I completely derail your plan from that point on, not only will you be like, well, now I can't put a worker out there and get this many more of this resource. Now I have to deal with that. And how am I going to get these resources I was originally aiming for? I have to build that up again if I even want to do that now. There's no way that Architects is simpler than that, easier to play than Raiders of the North Sea. Raiders of the North Sea is just an easier game.
I wouldn't say it's an easier game. I can't say it's an easier game. I've taught Architects a lot easier than I have Raiders of the North Sea.
I have yet to see that. I don't. And this is, I know I'm going from a more limited of just what I've played, but I played Raiders of the North Sea in a loud bar restaurant. I would not be able to do that with Architects of the West Kingdom. I can't give that to you. I'm sorry. There's just no
and
way.
I'm not budging either. I think ease of play is Architects of the West Kingdom because when it comes down to it, you're just putting a worker out there and you're taking the action of the space. Yeah, you get to compound it with other workers. You're just placing. This one, you have to place one and pick one. You got to make sure you're putting them in the right areas.
Okay, so then you would say that that's giving it more of a meaningful choice then, because of how you have to foreplan all your turns like that.
Well, yeah, your strategy, but you can impact the other person's strategy and Architects of the West Kingdom.
That's
more so than you. It is not an arbitrary choice.
If I wanted to in Architects of the West Kingdom, I could just be the player where I'm like, I'm not going to put out workers. I'm just going to take every single one of yours and put them in jail.
You can't do that. You have to place out a worker to jail everybody.
Right. But I mean, it's essentially the same thing. I can just put out my worker, it's jail yours.
It doesn't do you any good to do that. That's not an arbitrary choice.
I'm not saying it would do me well. It would do bad for you. And that in itself is a strategy. And
your hate for Architects of the West Kingdom, you're not taking your bias out of this.
No, I'm absolutely not taking my bias out of it. It's not a better game.
Well,
Architects.
then I guess we're gonna have to call it a wash because neither one of us are budging, and it's already 9:30. So
All right, then let's call it a wash. Which I know Architects moves on, but I
not by
disagree
much,
firmly.
by 8 votes. No, but I just think it's a simpler game. In all honesty, now will it get past Azul? I don't know.
It won't.
maybe
I'm sorry, it won't. All right,
maybe I should just kind of push this to it just to annoy you.
you said it. It's already 9:30. We need to go. No, now so that means Architects of the West Kingdom moves past Raiders of the North Sea, incorrectly so. Sometimes mistakes happen. It's okay. But now we're going into the finals. Azul versus Architects of the West Kingdom. In this final round, we do not take sides. We just debate it factor for factor in each of the ones. And Daniel, is there any that seem immediately obvious to you?
1 second before we move on to this, just wanted to let you know
Oh yes.
Raiders of the North Sea was our 5th vote getter with 10 votes. And Dominion was actually our number 2 vote getter with 26.
I agree with them.
Okay,
let's see how these
so if I had to pick one that jumps out to me, it's kind of hard to say it because I really like Architects of the West Kingdom, but the two that jump out to me that Azul wins hands down is ease of play and art and production.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Now let's talk replay value. How many expansions does Raiders have? 2?
Raiders has 1. And I think I'll have to look it up, but I've heard they're coming out with a second one with a big box expansion.
Not Raiders, Architects.
Oh, sorry, Architects has 1. And there's talks from what I've heard. I think our mutual friend was talking about it too. They're having a big box expansion with another expansion with it.
Yeah. Now technically Azul does have 2 expansions. Both there's the summer, not Summer Pavilion. It's the one where it has the overlay and alternate boards. Those are expansions, and the Joker tiles are an expansion. They're not a promo set. They are actually an expansion to it. Simple one. I don't think either of those combined meets the complexity of an expansion from Architects, but it is more technically. Now, if there is a bigger box plan, then we count them a wash. That's fine. They're both 2 expansions.
No, I know there's a bigger box coming. That one is a guarantee.
So then they're tied. Range and time, I believe Azul I know is 2 to 4. Architects
Architects 2 to 6.
Architects is 2 to 6. Okay, then that, I mean, it is substantially longer, but I don't know that that's as important. It adds per player, and Azul technically does a little bit longer. It's an overall faster game.
I think actually replay value goes to Architects of the West Kingdom when we get down to minimum numbers of plays.
Yeah, absolutely. The variability in that alone, I would say, goes to Architects. Sure.
All right, let's just skip meaningful choice because that's going to be a knuckle dragger.
Okay. So
let's move on to game immersion. Does the theme match the mechanism? I say more so in Azul because you are making a tile and overlay.
Yes.
Fine, I'll give you that one. Player interaction, I have to give that one to Architects of the West Kingdom just because how angry you were getting the first time you were playing it. I've had a good time twice with Dom playing this game. I had a great time at Dice Tower West playing this game. And there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of trash talking. I think it goes really well for Architects.
Yeah. However, the memorable moments, I would say, like there are some memorable moments in Architects, but in Azul though, that there is always the fact that the last person has to take the last set of tiles, and if planned correctly, that could end up being a whole heap of useless tiles for one player, which is culminating negative points, which is
for me.
For them,
I say memorable moments is a wash because they're both really good. I've had both really memorable moments for it as well. Sure. So it looks like we're going with a wash on game immersion.
Okay. So a wash for a game immersion sounds good. Now, meaningful
choice.
Okay. Impacting other strategies. They are both very, very strong contenders. I am going to push for Azul.
I know why you're going to push for Azul because the whole drafting and forcing them to take the negative pieces. But I mean, there's an actual mechanism built into the game for player interaction and determining somebody's long-term strategy.
Mm-hmm. Impacting their long-term strategy, but the fact that there is no random variables during gameplay in Azul at all. There is no random variables. Other than which tiles come out, there is no random. Everything is open to everybody. That everybody knows what is capable of drafting when. That is pure strategy at that point.
There's not a lot of random in Architects of the West Kingdom either, because the only time things get flipped up is when things are bought, but everything slides down on the people. And the only time I think is that you draw the buildings upside down. That's it, or face down.
Yeah.
I think that's the only random. But then again, it's a hand of cards that you hide from other players too.
Right.
So
right, it's hidden information. There is some.
But
random...
there's nothing wrong with hidden information. You can still
No,
impact other people's strategy.
I'm saying impacting your long-term strategy and impacting other players because you can't base it off of what their ace in their sleeve is, because you won't know when that's coming. I mean, it's it would be like comparing poker to chess, right? Like I think that's an apt comparison. I mean, granted, it's less random and less strategic, but it really is like which one impacts the other players, which one has more of a meaningful choice, would be chess and poker. Not to say that poker is not strategic, you know what I mean? There is no arbitrary choices in Azul at all. There is none.
Man, you really hate Architects of the West Kingdom because of that one mechanism.
No, I'm saying there is no random, there's no arbitrary choices in Azul. I'm not saying anything about the other game, whatever.
You're determined to try to push Azul because of your hate. You're not taking your bias out of it like we're supposed to.
Are you saying that there's more meaningful choices in Architects than Azul?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
How?
First off, the tiles coming out random. Second off, if you're playing the random sides, if you make an arbitrary choice, it does hurt you, but it doesn't affect you all that bad. Trust me, I've done it. And I still got in second place of the game. You don't believe me? You can ask my wife. I can bring her over here.
You might have gotten second place in a 2-player game, but that's regardless of the point. No.
It was second place in a 3-player game. Thank you very much.
You're saying that a mistake made in Azul won't affect you nearly as bad as Architects? I can't.
If you can mitigate it properly, yes.
Well, if you can mitigate anything properly, that's true. There is,
and plus, yeah, Azul's there, but when it comes to you keep saying it affects other people's long-term strategy. There is a mechanism in West Kingdom that impacts other people's strategy.
Okay, but your long-term strategy and non-arbitrary choices still go to Azul. I'll give you that you can affect other players more.
I could give you the arbitrary choices one, but impacting along your own strategy.
No, there's no way. I can't give that to you. I really can't. That's like
saying give it to you either.
That's like saying poker is more strategic than chess. It's not true.
Why are we caring about comparing poker to chess? One is reading other players. One is reading the board.
Yes. That's the same comparison.
Yes, but we're not just talking about that. We're talking about long-term strategy. Yes. If you take pieces, I have to pivot. I can still conduct case in point, when we're playing Architects of the West Kingdom, my entire strategy of that game was to go for the cathedral. Okay. And once someone blocked me from that, I came in second place of that game because I got blocked from doing what I needed to do in the cathedral. That's not an arbitrary choice. That's impacting other long player strategy, and that's impacting my choices as well because I had to pivot.
No, I give you that. I give it long-term strategy goes to Architects. But no, your long-term strategy.
Okay, you give it to me. All right. Yeah.
No, impacting other strategies Yes, that goes to architect. But impacting your long term, no. Like then there's no arbitrary choices in Azul. There's really not because you are playing from start to finish, trying your best to fulfill.
I said I'll give you the arbitrary choices in Azul. I can't give you the other two.
There is, you have to because impacting your long term strategy is the game. What you evolve in your Azul board is continuous, and you can see what other people are playing, and you monitor what they're playing, and that's how you impact their strategy. If I see you need blue, I'm not going to let you get blue, but I have to create the situation in my board that I can necessitate using those blue tiles. No, I can't give it to you. We have like we're not going to budge. I'm not doing this because it's architect. I would argue this for any other game versus Azul. Azul is pure strategy. It really is. So let's call it a wash.
All right.
All right. So a wash.
Azul still wins.
Huh?
Azul wins.
Azul wins. Okay.
Well, even if we call this a wash, it's 2-1. If it went to a tie, Azul would still win it.
Okay. Well, then let's talk.
I told you it would have been a knuckle dragger.
Yeah. I knew neither of us were going to budge, but it really is pure strategy.
So even if it went to a tie, Azul would have won because they had 37-18 votes. It was our number one vote getter. Architects of the West Kingdom was number 3 behind Azul and Dominion.
It had more than twice as many. Wow. So Azul is our.
It's still not as bad as Castles of Burgundy last week. Let me tell you something I forgot to mention at the top of the podcast. I recently relooked at that poll. Castles of Burgundy was at 165 in the second place, which I think was Trajan, was only at like 38.
Wasn't even close. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, congratulations to Azul. I really do think that it should be the poster child of the Mensa Select title. I really do. I think it's a perfect example of, as far as what Mensa is aiming for, Azul is a great product to put their name on.
Yeah, honestly, if we're going to go like Mensa Select, poster child, it should have been chess.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a reason people don't like playing chess as much, but Azul is a great alternative to that.
No, I don't disagree. It's a fine game. Yeah. I still don't agree with a lot of the points you were making, but I like Azul. I think it's phenomenal. Plus, I just love watching you have to argue for Architects of the West Kingdom. It's hilarious.
I think half the time you just like to butt heads with me just to make me stress. I really do. But that's entertaining for the people watching, so that's all that matters. So with that being said, we want to thank you all for tuning in. Once again, congratulations to Azul. If you ever want to watch us join in with the debate live, like our friend Dice Chuck did, you can at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames.
As well as you can find the video re-uploads of every Twitch that we record the following week on YouTube at Everyday Board Games 2020, as well as the audio version on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. I'm sorry, it's been a long night.
And if you ever want to contact us directly, you sure can with suggestions, comments, or just to say hi. Email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com.
As well as you can give those ideas and comments at our Twitter account, EBG Podcast.
So I want to thank you very much for tuning in. As always, I've been Daniel.
And I've been Daniel.
And we want to thank you for watching Everyday Board Games.
Have a good one.